All right, this one is looking at the position of a PC technician, which is what you're being prepared for through this class. And that they're talking about some basic things of the technician in here. So they're covering some terms for you and a few different items of some ways of doing stuff. So the first thing they talk about is that they're going through safety for the first section. Should be, yeah. So that this first section is on safety, which is also protecting the machine and protecting yourself. Okay? Although primarily on safety, you're concerned about protecting yourself or anyone else around you. So, one of the things that they proceed to talk about there, one is that they talk about here on the electronic discharge, the electrostatic discharge, or that you'll see that abbreviated as ESD. And we mentioned it in class the other day, and actually for what this room was built for, they didn't exactly build it exactly correctly. Okay? We really shouldn't have carpet in this room. It should have been a tile floor to keep from the electrostatic building up on us, of having the static electricity, okay, to cut down on it. But they put carpet in anyway. And if they were going to put carpet, they should have put special carpet, because there's actually a special carpet made out there for that purpose that includes little wires running through the floor that grounds the carpet and keeps you from getting static electricity off the carpet. This time of the year is the worst time for it, because there's the drier air with the colder air, that we've got drier air, and that's when we get the static electricity. So static electricity, it's not going to be so much harmful to you as it's harmful to the machine. Okay? Devices inside your machine are designed to run at 3, 5, or 12 volts. Okay? Your static electricity is going to throw off a charge upwards in terms of 10,000 volts. Needless to say, if we run that through those parts, we will burn the parts up. Okay? So you got to be careful about static electricity. They talk about there that you can use grounding straps, and where it's a strap you put around your wrist and you attach to the machine or to a grounding mat, and that pulls any static electricity charge that starts to build on you. It's continuously pulling it off because you're grounded to the machine or the mat. Okay? And you're running it through the case is what you're running it if you're connected to the case of the computer. But the other one is, like I told y'all in class the other day, you can also effectively ground yourself and get rid of charges on you just by touching the power supply. Power supply is actually designed to handle 240 volts. Okay? We're running them on 120 volts here, but most of your power supplies are designed to run wherever in the world. There's a switch on the back of them that you can run it at 120 or 240. So the stuff inside the power supply is designed for a higher voltage. So you can ground yourself out on that instead of grounding yourself out on the memory chip or something else and burning that part up, because you've just run more electricity through than it could handle going through its little connections, and they burned out the connections. Does everybody follow on that? So you do want to make sure that you do discharge yourself on it and keep from being on that. Now, warning on that, and it's not as big of a problem today as it was. If you work on old monitors, on the CRT monitors, those were the big ones, okay? On those, you do not want to be using a grounding strap because they've got a capacitor sitting in there that holds a real large voltage. If you're grounded and you make contact with that, guess what? You're going to run that huge voltage through you, which is not good news. Okay? But now you're not going to likely be working on those monitors anymore, so that's not as big of a problem as it was. Okay? That's not, in these monitors you don't have that issue. Okay? That they're just regular circuit boards sitting behind there, and that they're running on the low voltages also. Okay? But in the case of those CRT monitors, you had the opposite problem with the static electricity, with the static discharge, that you had the opposite problem on it, that if you were grounded to keep from allowing a charge to get caught in you, that you would run the charge into you on it if you made contact with the wrong place. Questions on that? But that's how the TVs came on and off instantly and stuff on those old ones. That they kept a huge charge sitting in there to handle that. And that's even if those monitors have not been plugged in for months or a year. They will still have a large charge sitting on them. Does everybody follow on that? It's not something that'll real quickly disappear off of it. It sits there and holds it. It will slowly dissipate it, but it'll still, a long time period later, still be holding a large charge. So be aware on that one, and to be careful on that. We flip to their fact sheet. See if there's. So basically, they just told you what I told you. And to keep from having static electricity build up is to have a higher humidity also. So in some computer repair places, you'll see them running humidifiers in there to keep the humidity up. When I worked at the cloister at Sea Island, they had carpeted the room that we had the computer in there, just like they have here. And we'd have static problems in it all the time, and we actually would spray the carpet with water a couple of times a day during the winter. That we carry around a spray bottle and just spray it slightly just to keep a bit higher humidity on the carpet and keep from building up static charge.
Wouldn't it make the carpet mildew? Wouldn't it make the carpet mildew?
If we'd gotten it really wet, yeah, but we weren't really getting it wet. We were just light spray across just to keep the humidity up around it. The other problem was it wasn't going to last real long anyway, because remember where I just said it was at. That we were sitting up there on Sea Island, so humidity most of the year was high in the summer and everything, so you had a mildew problem anyway. Okay? That was their solution on it that we did there. They say to keep your body in constant contact with the metal frame of the computer when working inside it if you don't have the grounding strap. As long as you just touch the power supply regularly, and if you go to move around a little bit, touch the power supply again, as long as you haven't moved your feet around or whatever, you're not going to have built static on you anyway. Okay? So it's not a case of that you've got to be constantly holding contact on it. Wrist straps quite often get in the way of people working on them, and I've not ever really used wrist straps. But there are some places that you do have to use them. They talk about some environmental facts here. Mainly on this is on getting rid of your old stuff. Big part is that they mention about is to recycle the stuff. in a large amount of the stuff that you're using of your computer components and stuff is environmentally not friendly materials in them. And so you really don't want to send them to the dump. And that will leach stuff into the water supplies and everything else, so. But they should be sent through proper recycling. And that in a lot of states, there's requirements on how you've got to dispose of the stuff. I don't think there is in Georgia. But if we were in California or New York, there's strict requirements on what we got to do with old batteries and old computers and stuff. And then they tell you on cartridges for your printers and stuff, the same type thing on it. On there, it mentions about if you need to clean up a spill from a laser toner cartridge, it notes there not to use a regular vacuum. That's not an environmental issue, that's just a mess issue. Because with your laser toner, if you go to clean it up with a vacuum cleaner, it's fine enough. It'll go through the bag on the vacuum cleaner, the filtered bag on the vacuum cleaner, and just blows it right back out the back, and you just made a bigger mess with your toner. Okay? Cold, wet cloths is the best thing to clean it up with. If you spill the toner on your clothes, best bet is cold, wet stuff to clean it, and if you go to wash it, put it in pure cold water, no heat to it. Because remember how the laser printer is working. It puts the particles on there and then heats them to a high temperature to melt them on the paper. If you get the toner on your clothes and you throw it in the washing machine on a warm or hot wash, guess what you did with the toner that's on your clothes? You just set it in position. Okay? If you did it with cold water, they'll wash right on out because it didn't do anything to set it in there. So just be aware of that one. It says there that lithium batteries are considered non-hazardous waste. Actually, any of those I've always heard were hazardous waste materials on batteries. On the lithium ones do have the problem of you're not supposed to fly with them or keep them separate when flying and stuff, and they have controversy on that because they like to catch fire occasionally. Let's see. Professionalism. And this is sort of your work ethics part of the class. Okay? If you're a PC technician out there, if you're one that's working behind in the back, you're probably not dealing with the customers. So some places that you're going to work as a PC technician, you're not ever dealing with people. A lot of times as a PC technician, you're dealing with the people. And so you need to have a professionalism to you about how you deal with people. And that, so you need to be aware of a lot of things on it. They tell you to make good impressions. If you have appointments to going and doing stuff for people, make sure you're there on time, or alert them that you're not going to be on time to it. That does happen, and they know that happens. But try to be on time, and if you can't be on time, alert them that whatever's happened. Because if you're a PC technician out there, as you're working on one machine, what you thought was going to take an hour may end up taking 3 hours. And so you may have told somebody else you'd be there after an hour and a half or whatever, and that you discover the job's taking you 3 hours to do instead. Alert the next people that the job you're working on is taking longer than expected. Communicate well. As you work with the people out there, Remember, the people that you are fixing the machines for are generally not experts, they're novices. They don't know a lot about computers. And that you're going to have to keep down from using a lot of terminology with them a lot of times. That you're going to have to state things plainer. Okay? And that you're going to have to ask them simple questions on it. The other part is, be clear in what you tell them. Tell them accurately. Don't give them some story about whatever's wrong. Just do what you need to do, and if you see some other problems, alert them to the other problems, but leave that to their choice to do whatever. So explain the problem and explain your solution and about how you can fix it on it or whatever, or if it's not fixable. That as a note there, show respect for your clients. Don't argue with them or be defensive on it. Don't accuse them on it. If you find it's something they did wrong, find some way that you can explain to them what they did wrong, but don't do it as blaming them that they goofed it all up on it, but tell them about what can be done to keep that problem from occurring again and to encourage them on it. And don't insult them. And then they said, avoid distractions or interruptions. Don't take personal phone calls, and ask permission before taking work-related calls. So if you're there, you may well, it depends on what you're doing, that you may well be needing to take calls or whatever, and most of the time a lot of them aren't going to be a problem on it, but some people don't want you think. But don't sit there and take a long phone call with somebody when somebody's paying you to be working on their stuff. And sort of tell them what's going on. And then they make the comment, don't complain about clients on social media platforms. Try to stay away from complaining at all on social media platforms. Not just about clients, but your employer, etc. Okay? Because everybody reads it. And that you're going to have problems from that. If they've authorized you to make a repair and then you find something else that's got to be repaired on it, get their permission before you go to do further repair and explain to them what's going on. So, and then like where you've replaced parts on it. Now some places if you're working at may not allow you to do that, do this part, but generally a good thing to ask people if they want the old part. Okay? Treat repairing the PC just like you like being treated on the repairing of your car. Okay? Quite often you don't want to keep the old part of the car, but you might want to see the old part to see that it really was bad. Okay? So explain to them about what you've been doing and help them with all of that stuff. And then dress appropriately when you're working with them. An appropriate dress could vary depending on where you're working with, etc. If I'm going to work on machines for people, I'm generally dressing just like I am here. Okay? Although there's some people that have told me specifically, show up in jeans and shorts, or jeans and t-shirt or whatever, or shorts and t-shirt in the summer, and it's no problem to them. But if I'm going into a business to work on their machines, I'm going to dress to this level to go in and work on it, unless specifically it was something we were going to be doing that was really dirty and they knew on that anyway. Okay? Like running new wire through their ceiling. Probably going to wear polo shirt and jeans to go do that because I'm going to get dirty from her. I may wear a t-shirt. And that some of my clients have specifically told me when I keep showing up like this, they're going, you know, you can just wear jeans and a t-shirt when you come over to work on our machine. You don't need to put on something better to come work when we call you at whatever time to come work. But other places, but I want to not look that, because you're going to look like an employee in there. Because in some places, when I've worked at a vet's office on their machines, fixing theirs, their machines were all sitting at the front desk, so I was sitting at the front desk working on the machine. Well, everybody that came into the office at the place thought I was working there. And they'd ask me questions, and I'd have to point them to the other people to get their answers. And so I really needed to have a better look to me to keep their look up. So consider that as you're working on it. It's not something to look junky on. Last one they note is to follow up with clients. Sometimes it may be a good bet, depending on what was wrong and what you did to fix. Check with them again after a few days or a week and ask them, was it taken care of? And that'll give a good impression to them of that fact you followed up on it. Questions on that? All right. All right. Then they talk about tools. And they go through a few things here. I would suggest you get a basic toolkit if you're going to be working on them. Maybe a little bit more than what our toolkits are, which you all used the other day. But they've got the basic things for you, so that you need. I'm just noticing. Okay, there it is. Picked it up and was holding it. You need a flathead screwdriver. You need a Phillips screwdriver. You need a smaller one on those, generally two. This one comes with a smaller Phillips, but not a smaller flathead apparently. Thought it did, but maybe it's, y'all may have switched cases it was in. You need to use the proper size screwdriver on it. Otherwise you'll strip your heads on your screws. Okay? And some screws need the bigger and some need the smaller. So make sure you got that. That is a very helpful little tool, because that will allow you to pick up screws that you dropped inside the case, where you drop down to a real small spot that you can't get your fingers down in. And some of you have bigger fingers than others of you have, and so it's a bigger problem for some of you than for others. But that will allow you to reach down there and pick up that screw and pull it out of awkward positions. So that can be an extremely useful little tool. You'd be amazed how much you will use it. Tweezers in here. These are just regular ones. So if we take the little piece off of it, they're going to stay open. You got to close them. On other kits, you usually also have the reverse on the tweezers where they stay closed automatically, and you got to squeeze them to open them. Those are usually more useful for working on computers. Is when you got a pair of tweezers that will hold on without you having to squeeze them shut. Does everybody follow on that? But this kit doesn't have that. I don't know why they still put this tool in the toolkits. It really doesn't do you any good nowadays, because it's a chip puller. And guess what? Y'all aren't putting memory chips or pulling memory chips out of machines anymore. Okay? But that's what this is made for. It's basically like tweezers, but notice it's got prongs sitting to the side, and what it does is you put it on the two ends of the memory chip, put on it, and you can pull straight up to pull the memory chip out. Okay? Y'all don't have to do that anymore, because all of your memory is now on cards that you just slide card slots in. So that one they could really leave out of these and nobody would ever know. The other one is the torque screwdriver. We've got torque screws in there too, which are those multi-headed ones. And This one's just got a small torque driver on it. There's also a lot of the kits, if you get a little bit bigger kit, they'll come with where there's two sizes of the torque kits. Because there are bigger and smaller torque screws in the machines. And they included in here a little parts holder, or actually you'll see others refer to it as a spot to hold your solder if it was one with a soldering iron. But you really don't have to do much soldering ever on machines. There's only been a couple of times I've ever soldered on a computer. So, if you're going to really do this stuff, you are going to need to at some point get a toolkit, and I'll try to remember to bring my toolkit in and show you that one day. And it's actually got a soldering iron in it. It may or may not have been used. If it's being used, I actually didn't use it for PC repair. I used it for doing my stained glass. Okay. Multimeters, that we'll look at those later on, to where you can check to see how much power is going through whichever way, and we'll be looking at those when we get to looking at power supplies later on. And so you can check your voltages on each of the different lines and stuff. Because if it's not enough voltage coming out or too much coming out, the machine's not going to work right. There are power supply testers also, and we've actually got some of those coming to school so that we can just do a straight out test on the power supply to make sure it is producing all the power it should be. Loop back plug. All a loop back plug does is the wire comes in and goes out, or goes out and comes in. Okay? Is it just, instead of it going to someplace and it's coming from someplace, it runs the wire back into it. And that you can use that to test the outlet on it to see if it's receiving the signal or not. Likewise, inside windows, you can also send stuff to certain devices of doing a loop back test on it, and just goes to it without going out from there as a software test on it. So you got software loop back testing also. What is your loop back IP address? Anybody know? In IP version 4.
IP version 4, as in like
What is the number address for loopback? 127.0, actually 127.something.something.something. Usually 127.0.0.1.
Would not IPv6 be 1.26?
IP version 6 is actually real simple. It is 1.
I thought I didn't know it was 1.7. I thought it was 196.
192 is your private address.
196.168.
Okay, but 127, the whole series of 127 is your loopback address, and that's to test to see if you can send a signal to your network adapter. But the IP address is 127.something.something.something, and normally used is 127.0.0.1. But it can be anything of 127 between 0 and 255, 0 and 255, 0 and 255.
I noticed that DDoS me. I think someone DDoS me the other day. DDoS my internet.
Denial of service.
Yeah. First rats, that's not every day.
I'm not understanding you.
You don't know what a DDoS attack is?
You
don't know what a DDoS attack is?
Exactly right.
Yeah. But DDoS attack's not going to use the 127. It's just sending out pings.
It's sending out packets.
No, it's sending a massive number. Actually, a DDoS attack is going to be sending a ton of pings from a bunch of different machines.
Does he go through your IP, knowing your IP address and start?
That it's actually using the IP address for your machine. It's using a real address. Okay. But 127.0.0.1 is a reserved address just for loopback, and it's not. You'll never see it used for anything else. It's reserved. And that's a problem with IP version 4 is that they reserved millions, a million addresses or something out there for loopback address. We only need one. So IP version 6, they did it as just one, and they actually assigned it the number 1. Which is why I can remember that one. That's the only IP version 6 address I can tell you. Okay, so it's 31 zeros followed by a 1. All right, then they've got their suggested tools right here. They talk about a ratchet screwdriver. Your more expensive tool sets do include ratchet screwdrivers in them. Once in a while it's handy to me, but usually I'm just using regular screwdrivers is what I always am using. The insertion and extraction tool, and it says there for removing integrated circuit chips that are on the motherboard and some computer components that you can use it to remove them. Actually, that's an extraction tool. I'll show you one day what the insertion tool looks like. It's a little bit different one. It's got a flat surface and sets the chip into it, and you press down with it to do a uniform pressure on it. So it's actually 2 different tools on it. They presented it like it's one tool. The anti-static strap, I'll bring one of those in, show you one day. The extension magnet, I don't like that one. That they say to retrieve screws. Most people that are PC technicians would tell you not to use that extension magnet. Because how is all the stuff working inside your computer, a lot of the stuff working in there? How's the stuff stored on your hard drive? Magnetically. Okay? So putting that extension magnet in there and putting it up beside your hard drive could mess up your hard drive. Likewise, in the memory chips, it's actually magnetically putting stuff back and forth sometimes in there. Okay, so don't use the magnet one like they've just suggested right there. Likewise, I would not use magnetic screwdrivers in there. Okay, agreed, they're not strong magnets and they probably aren't going to hurt anything, but they may. More than likely, static electricity that you're not going to hit the right spot and really do anything, but you may. So let's not cause harm. We'll go back to the Hippocratic Oath. Do no harm. Let's just do good. Okay? Because you are a PC doctor is what you're training to be. The 3-prong part retriever, I just showed you that one. And then I mentioned about the multimeter. It will allow us to check voltages all throughout the machine. And so we can see what voltage is getting to where and see if it's a voltage issue. Power supplies do go bad. Power supply tester is one that will allow us to connect up to the connections on it, and we'll test it more better than the multimeter will, because it will test it with a load on it, etc. Where the meter, we're not testing with a load on it, and that can affect what the output is on it. Loopback plug we already mentioned. They suggest having known good spare parts with you. You may have some stuff around with you that is a good part, but you may not. If they brought it to you to work on in your shop or whatever, yeah, you've got that. So, but carrying around spare parts with you is a cost issue. So, generally, no, you're not going to have spare parts a lot of times with you. Sometimes I do have some cables with me, and once in a while I may have a network card with me. Back when we used everybody was doing dial-up, I did usually always have an extra modem card that I'd have, because every time, like yesterday where an electrical storm came through, I'd tend to have somebody would be calling me that their modem got fried by the electrical storm. And so it was consistently getting replaced anyway, and so I could carry it, but other things not. Postcard is a special card you can plug in there that checks to see if the post stuff is occurring right. Not used as much now. First off, you don't have very many expansion slots in machines anymore, but it's still mentioned right here that it tells you some things on it, but not ever really used on that one. Maintenance. And this is one a lot of people haven't done to their machines and that you need to consider on. One, they do need dusting out occasionally. Compressed air to blow it out is really useful. If you use a vacuum cleaner to vacuum stuff out of it, you do not want to be using one with a metal tube on the vacuum cleaner. You want a plastic tube. Because guess what? The metal tube gives us electrical problems again. So do try to keep the dust down on them. If you go to work on a machine, dust the thing out while you've got it open. General person out there, they're going to keep the outside of the case clean, but they're doing nothing to the inside, and that when you look at them, you'll go, ooh, this thing needs dusting. And compressed air is the best bet on it, and to buy cans of clean compressed air. Humidity, try to keep humidity controlled in a room around the computer. Too much humidity will present problems to them. Too little humidity presents problems too. They mentioned there about positive pressure systems and negative pressure systems. Anybody know what that is? You're really not. You're going to see it in some high computer facilities in terms of it, but usually not. The positive pressure system, you've got more pressure in the room to keep stuff from getting into there, and where you've got a control on what air gets into the room. So you've got that sometimes, but not too much in terms of the positive pressure or negative pressure systems. Okay? But it gives you a more controlled environment on it. When I worked at PMSC and we had a special computer building that was built for all kinds of environmental conditions, actually when you went in the computer room there, it was pressure. It was positive pressure on it. So you opened the door and you always got hit by a blast of air coming out of it. It wasn't pulling air in through the door, it pushed it out the door whenever you opened. Cleaning internal PC components, you pretty much want to try to stay away from water, and particularly if it's plugged in, because that presents all kinds of problems on that. EMI, electrical magnetic interference, is going to be signals coming off of other devices that will interfere with it, particularly with networking type things. Microwave ovens can present problems to that because it is giving off EMI. Fluorescent light fixtures give off EMI. We don't want to run our networking wire right across the top of those fluorescent light units. Anti-static, we already mentioned. Backups, I'm going to mention throughout the class. You need to back up your data on your machine regularly. And keep that data at a separate location, the backup. So that if the college here, if the computers were here on campus, the servers, they're actually sitting at Walker and Rome, they should be backing up probably every day. And the backup should be being taken to some other location. They may be backing up on the cloud, and thereby it being stored in another location. You want your data backed up to somewhere else. If it is a business, they need to do backups of all their data. Programs, they may or may not. The operating system, they may or may not, because they may do a complete backup of everything on the system. but they definitely need their data backed up. Okay? So that if something happens to the machine, you still got the data. If the hard drive fails, that you haven't lost everything. There have been numerous businesses that lost their hard drive and went out of business because of it. Because they no longer had any idea who owed them what money. And most businesses have a large amount of money owed to them. And how many of you would pay your bills each month if they didn't send you a bill? Okay? People just don't do that. There is occasionally somebody, but as a general rule, no, they don't. The other problem is your building burns down with your computer system in it and the backup sitting in there. Guess what? They're at the same place. If you had the backup stored somewhere else, you're okay. Or the tornado went through and knocked your building down and destroyed your computer and your building. If you got your backup at a different location, you're still there. It does not have to be someplace that is a highly secure location, other than it's got to be where your data is secure, depending on what type of data you've got. Okay? So that schools actually got to put theirs, it's got to be in a locked facility because of the type of information that's on there, but it should be in some type of encryption on it anyway. Okay? When I ran the computers for the school in the 80s, backups went home with me and sat in my bedroom. And I took them home every day. And took the backup device back up to school each day and then took it home each day. When I worked at the cloister, back up there, we took it to the gas station each night because it was still open. As we did the backup at midnight, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, their gas station stayed open all night. Nothing else was open on the island all night. So we'd take the backup and left it at the gas station. You'd think of the gas station as being a high-risk environment, but guess what? Likelihood of the offices attached to the hotel and the gas station burning down or getting damaged at the same point was unlikely. It may have been a higher risk environment than where the real part was, but the object was if something happened to the real place that we had the other one. If a hurricane had have come in and we were ordered to evacuate the island, we were actually told that if you were working and an evacuation order came in, you had to take the backup with you wherever you went. So when you headed inland to whatever location, you had the backup to their computer system with you until you could get back to the island. Backups are important. So do your backups. That includes your home machine. If you got your pictures all stored on your computer, store them on another external hard drive also. And I would keep that external hard drive somewhere else would be your best bet. Okay? If you got a storage building out in the yard, you can put it out there. It's a separate building. And if something happened to your house, probably not going to happen to it too. Now, agreed, if a tornado went through, might well wipe out both, but if the house caught on fire, you'd still have what's out there. Does everybody follow? So, backups to me are an important one. Surges and spikes. A spike is a temporary increase in power going through, and it's just a sudden spot of it occurs. If you made through a static discharge onto the machine, you just ran a spike on it. A surge is going to be a longer term increase in power on it. Does everybody follow on that? So a surge is longer term, spike is just a very short term amount. It's going to show as just a peak on your, if you're looking at it on a graphical display of your electricity. When the power line gets knocked over, you're going to have a spike go through at that point. Now, if it grounds out, you may have a surge against another wire. You may have a surge come from it also. That it may stay as a higher amount going through it. Surges tend to do more damage than spikes do. So be aware on those. The device that protects against over voltages, which is surges and spikes, is what? What device could we put in here to keep from having large amounts of voltage hit our machines?
Power surge? Power surge extension strips?
You could put a power strip that's got a surge protector on it, but not all power strips are surge protectors. Be aware of that, okay? That will do, one for one do it. Now, they're going to generally only a few times protect on that surge on you, okay? What else will do it? A UPS, a universal power supply. It will sit there and filter your power for you. If your power gets too low, it's got a battery in there that will up the amount of power and continue it on. If it's a high amount of power, it will cut it down and send through the correct amount of power on it. Now, warning on a UPS. UPS is usually going to have 4 or 6 outlets on it. Some of those outlets are going to be protected through the surge protector. All of those outlets are usually going to be surge protected. However, some of those outlets may be going through the UPS as far as keeping the power filtered, or if your power gets cut off, to continue supplying power for a certain amount of time. Some of the other outlets will not. If you have a laser printer, you do not want to plug it into the battery backed up part of your UPS. Okay? You just want surge protection on it. You don't want battery protection on it. Because the laser printer draws power all the time, keeping that laser heated up, and will pull a large amount, and it will kill your battery real quick. That's not allowed in here. So be careful on that one on it. Okay? But the computer and the monitor, you can have them plugged in the UPS protected side of it, the battery protected side, so that the machine doesn't shut off when somebody hits the power pole down on the road down there and the power goes out, that it gives us a few minutes to get the machine orderly shut down and everything saved, so that you don't lose whatever you were working on. And then they talk about online and offline UPSs, and that's a question of whether it's continuously feeding it through the battery or not feeding it through the battery. Or actually, offline one's correction. The online UPS, it is got the battery is feeding through there continuously. Offline UPS is when you've got another power supply for you, that if the power goes out, then it comes on and starts supplying power at that point to you. When I worked at PMSC in South Carolina, they had 2 large generators sitting there that would kick in if the power went out. However, there was a minute or two it took those diesel generators to fire up and get going to start producing electricity, which meant if you just had them, your equipment would have all shut down from loss of power. So they also had a wall of batteries sitting there, basically car batteries, although they were special built ones, but they're basically the same thing, that kept the equipment running for those 2 minutes. Actually gave them about 5 minutes was all it gave to keep everything running for about 5 minutes, to allow time for those generators, when the power went out, to fire up and start producing electricity. They had big enough diesel tank sitting in the ground to run those generators for 2 weeks when they came on. When Hurricane Hugo went through in the late 90s, in '89, they fully tested them because they were without electricity for 13 days, and they were trying to get a diesel shipment there because they had kept all of their equipment running right up to that point, and then they were running low on diesel fuel. But with a UPS, mainly, you're just plugging it in the wall and you're plugging your devices in the appropriate plugs. We should come back and see that later on in the course again. Surge spikes. Brownout is when the power drops down some. You know, when the lights dim or whatever on you sometimes, but the electricity doesn't go off, that's a brownout. When I went on a mission trip to Brazil, and my main job on the mission trip was to work on their computers down there, their electricity was horrible. I'd sit in the office there in the evening, and they had UPSs on all of the devices, and every time the UPS starts to work on a lot of them, they beep to let you know they're running now, because now you're ticking time down till they die, and then you have no power. They were continuously beeping at me sitting in the office there as their power would fluctuate up and down all over the place, and they needed the UPSs to get it to a general one on it. Those generators that we were using would be standby power supply systems that I used at the PMSC. At the cloister, we actually had a wall full of batteries also as a backup, and that we didn't have a generator. I don't think we had a generator sitting there. We just wanted to be able to shut the machine down in an organized format. School actually has a generator for their equipment, for the server equipment, because if you're over on 600 building, looking outside the 600 building, you can see the generator sitting there, and once in a while it kicks in. Part of this, isn't it? That is. All right. Questions on that? Because a lot of that was professionalism, equipment, and that type stuff, and just basic type things on it. Questions on all of that we've talked about? Because troubleshooting's the next part. They've only got it in just a short little piece there, but I want to spend a little bit of time on that. So Wednesday, let's talk troubleshooting. Okay? And go through that. You may have had some introduction to that already, but let's go through the steps of troubleshooting again and talk all about what you got to do troubleshoot. Because we've got 2 through this week, and then your test for 1 and 2 is due Monday. So let's do that, because that's the last part of the chapter on Wednesday. Okay? Everybody set with that? Any questions for me? So when y'all have questions or comments, make questions or comments. Because it's not just me up here talking. And I say I'm trying to give you some more than what they give you, and also gives you some practical information on it, and sometimes it's a little different than exactly what they say. Now, when you take the test, you're going to have to answer in terms of what they said.